What's up? This is Captain Terrence, and welcome to another episode of the Critical Podcast. We didn't do this last year. We are going to, however, this year, do our top 10 movies of 2017. So yeah, we'll just alternate and maybe talk about our movie a little bit, and that's that. So yeah. So my number 10 movie was Spider-Man Homecoming.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm surprised that got on your list.
I was surprised too. I don't know. I liked it a lot because of the Vulture and because of Michael Keaton.
Yeah, Michael Keaton was.
I really did not like Tom, whatever his face is, as Spider-Man or as Peter Parker. I felt that he was really obnoxious in the role, but I liked it was a very I liked the quality of it. It was better than most Marvel movies this year, I felt, but
yeah,
you know, I enjoyed it for what it was, and I enjoy Spider-Man. I think they were in a step in the right direction with this one. They took like 4 steps back with the Amazing Spider-Man, but I think in this one they're in the right direction. But I just don't like Tom, whatever his face is.
Yeah, what is his last name?
Oh crap, I forget.
Tom Holland.
Tom Holland, yeah, Tom Holland, yep, that's him. But yeah.
The thing that I liked about that movie, and that one isn't even an honorable mention for that one. I assume we're going to do honorable mentions at the end.
Yeah, we'll do
But I think what I liked about that one in comparison to other Marvel movies this year was that it wasn't trying to be this super over-the-top thing. It was pretty simplistic in structure. It often played out more like a high school comedy at some points, like something you'd see back in the day, like with, I don't know, stuff that was in the 90s a lot of the time. And like you, I really liked Michael Keaton as well. I thought everyone surrounding Tom Holland was really good.
Yeah.
And even the Iron Man bits that I originally wasn't that big a fan of, I came around on. I still don't think they're necessary,
No.
but overall, I think Marvel this year, with Thor, Ragnarok, Spider-Man, and Guardians of the Galaxy, I felt that this was Marvel's weakest year of movies so far.
Probably, yeah.
It's just they're after Avengers. Actually, correction. After the first Guardians of the Galaxy, since they saw the immense success of that one, they started doing some more stuff like that, where they did more comedic stuff, and more not taking themselves quite as seriously. Whereas pre-Guardians of the Galaxy and before the first Avengers movie, I'd say there was still comedy, aplenty, in the Marvel movies, but they balanced it out very well with serious elements.
Yeah.
So, Guardians of the Galaxy is one of my favorite Marvel movies, but it's because it did the comedic formula very right, and it fit within that universe. Whereas I feel like with a movie like Thor Ragnarok, while it was funny, I don't know if Thor needed to be just a buddy comedy or whatever. Just for
I mean, like the first 2 movies were so freaking dark, and so like they were just dark, and I felt like, I mean, I loved the first bit of Thor Ragnarok where he was talking with Satan or whatever. That was really funny, but yeah, I definitely think, I hope next year they're taking some right directions. Black Panther looks like it's going to be really good.
Black Panther looks promising, yeah. It looks like a more serious
and
one.
Infinity War looks like it's going to be really good too.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't analyze that movie for its story because it's not going to have one. Let's face it.
I don't know how they're going to have a story, really. Which doesn't
4
matter.
parts of it.
I mean, no matter how you put it, even if I wasn't as big on the Marvel movies this year, I'm still undeniably excited about Infinity War.
Yeah. I mean, the first Avengers basically had no plot, and it's one of the best Marvel movies created.
Yeah. Okay, well, my number 10 movie, and I didn't, like with music this year, I had a hard time ranking my movies because there were so many good ones this year.
Yeah, there were a lot of good movies this
year. There were 2 movies that I'd rank a 5 out of 5, maybe even 2 additional others that I was very close on giving a 5 out of 5. But, I mean, it was hard ranking my movies, so putting this one this low sort of hurt me, but Baby Driver is my number 10. I love the director of this movie. Shoot. I can't believe I can't remember his name right now, because I'm a big fan of his work. And it's... Just give me a minute. Gosh dang it. It's gonna kill me when I see his name.
Edgar Wright.
Yep. Yeah, I really like Edgar Wright's directing style. He's done other funny movies like Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead, and his directing style is always very quick comedy, very clever comedy, and it often has a sense of like it's very planned out and choreographed, and it's very clever.
Mm-hmm.
And in Baby Driver, he takes that idea of comedy that just sort of unfolds naturally to a whole new level. Because every bit of this movie feels purposeful. There's not one scene in it that feels like it doesn't belong, and every single laugh here pretty much works. Mm-hmm. And it was just a surprising movie overall because I'm not a big fan of Ansel Elgort as an actor,
mm-hmm.
or I haven't been. I wasn't even the hugest fan of him in The Fault in Our Stars, which was still overall a good movie besides that. But in this movie, he was excellent. He just did a really good job of making his character very likable and very relatable, and he brought a certain cool factor to his character that really worked too. Like, you were interested in getting to know more about him. I really liked him in the leading role. I also felt that John Hamm was good. He's great as always.
Yeah,
he's one of my favorite actors.
His role went from like kind of just there to like chillingly good. Like, especially at that ending scene. That ending scene with him in the car and driving around, that was like one of the most beautiful cinematic scenes I've seen in a movie. Mm-hmm. That was like such a well done scene, like the background music and everything.
Yeah. And the way his character develops is very intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, definitely.
It sort of comes out of nowhere where his character goes, but then if you think about it, it sort of makes sense, the progression.
I mean, you see how crazy he is. It's just a matter of time before he breaks.
Yeah. I really liked Jamie Foxx also. He's another actor that I'm not usually the biggest fan on, but he was actually probably my favorite part of this movie because, once again, he had some very funny lines, but his character had a menace about him that was sort of just undeniable. It was sort of fun in a way, but it was also quite frightening. And it feels a little awkward to talk about Kevin Spacey now with all the allegations that have come out about him. But I still can't deny that he really gave it his all in this performance. And
oh no, I don't care what he did. He's an incredible actor.
Yeah, I mean, there's the debate about separating the artist from the art, and that's a debate that's emerged big time during this year.
I mean, I can not so easily do it with some people, but with an actor like Kevin Spacey, I can easily do it. Because of his performance in House of Cards and then in Baby Driver.
Yeah, which once again is fair. But allegations aside, I don't really want to get into that because that's not what this is about. But he really just in this movie and a lot of other movies he just naturally commands the screen in every scene that he's in, and he really just made his character interesting to watch, and anytime he was on screen you were instantly laser focused on him and what he was saying. So I really liked him in the movie. And even though John Bernthal and Isa Gonzalez, I'm not sure if that's how you say her name, they both had pretty minor roles, but I also liked both of them. I'm glad I got to see John Bernthal on the big screen in particular, because I've always felt he would do good in a big movie. And
he's a
did
really good actor.
So yeah, overall, and of course can't talk about Baby Driver without mentioning the killer soundtrack. Every song is excellent, and the soundtrack has a sort of personality of its own because it practically commands the way the movie flows. Like, all the action scenes are choreographed to the music, the comedy is choreographed to the music.
I'll say it right here, like one of probably like, if not my favorite movie scene of this year, one of my favorite movie scenes of this year is the gunfight where every gunshot is to the music directly.
Yeah, it's so cool.
I was speechless in that part. Like, man, that was so beautifully done.
Yeah, which sometimes it can feel with other movies it can feel gimmicky to have a soundtrack defining how your movie works. Like Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is one that I can think of an example where they forced the soundtrack in, and but
yeah, number one of Guardians definitely implemented a lot better.
Definitely. But with this movie, the soundtrack it worked, and it was so enjoyable to listen to. I mean, especially in that memorable opening scene, which just gets you right into the movie with the soundtrack and
Yeah,
everything.
definitely.
This was almost, it could almost be like an action musical, which I never think a movie could be, but yeah, I really loved this movie.
Yeah.
I do wish I could have ranked it higher, but I loved it nevertheless.
Yeah.
It's the most fun I had at the movie theaters this year, I'd have to say.
Yeah, I'll be talking about it later. All right, well, my number 9 movie is Alien Covenant. Ever since watching the first Alien, I've been like gripped into the Alien world, just because it's so my movie. Like, I love everything about Alien, and Covenant, after not being able to stand through an hour of number 3 and not even watching number 4 because it's probably always bad.
Yeah.
I think Covenant took inspiration from Prometheus, which is also a really good one, and I think it expanded on it a lot and made it a lot more interesting. I loved all the background story, and the alien looked as good as ever, and I loved the setting too. Like, all the Alien movies do really good at keeping the action in one setting, but yet making something really interesting about it.
Yeah.
And that's something that I can easily talk about, because what Alien does best, I think, is its characters. And Michael Fassbender is one of the greatest actors on screen I've ever seen.
He was so impressive.
I don't know how much training it takes to be able to create 2 different characters, but I'm guessing he was in it for at least 3 or 4 years developing these characters.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works, but man, he did a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
And I also really like Catherine Waterston, and Danny McBride shocked me a lot with his performance as Tennessee.
He did me too.
And yeah, it was as groundbreaking as the first Alien, in my opinion. I know a lot of people did not like it, especially critics, but I felt like it was I felt like it was as good as, I felt like it was in the right direction.
So you like it better than Aliens?
No, but I like it better. I like it better than the other movies. It's it's my 3rd favorite.
Okay, that's fair. That's probably where I'd rank it as well.
Yeah.
Oh, do you like it better than Prometheus?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I'd probably rank it above Prometheus as well.
I just felt like Prometheus was a little bit boring, and I felt like Michael Fassbender wasn't quite in his element yet. That's also because he hadn't started developing his second character yet.
I thought it was just more of a sci-fi movie than any of the other Alien movies have been, which I liked it for that aspect. And it was sort of intriguing to see the origins of the aliens, but I don't really like the Guy Pearce, who played the husband of the main woman in that. I hate him as an actor, and I didn't like him that much in Prometheus. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying about Covenant. It's not in my list, but yeah, Fassbender definitely really did good, and I loved the ending of the movie as well. Just a superb ending.
Yeah, I loved it, and Ridley Scott has my respect full on. Like, every shot was just beautiful.
Yeah.
Just beautiful.
Yeah, he knows how to shoot a movie. There's no denying that. My 9th favorite movie, which I know you haven't seen, is called Good Time. It stars Robert Pattinson, yes, the guy who played Edward in Twilight, and also Cedric Diggory in Harry Potter. Stars him in the lead role, and I've not really heard of any of the other actors in this movie. But this was a movie that went a little under the radar as far as audience success, because it was more of an indie movie. But critics loved it, and I saw it just being repeatedly promoted on Rotten Tomatoes, which I have to give a big thanks to Rotten Tomatoes for just over these past years, introducing me to a lot of movies that have become some of my favorites to watch. And this one just came up over and over. And man, it is a good movie. That's all I'm going to say about it. It's about a bank heist that goes wrong.
I remember seeing the ad for that, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, you probably did. And basically it revolves around these 2 brothers, Robert Pattinson's character, who's named Connie, and his brother Nick. And his brother Nick has a mental disability, and so we see that established at the beginning of the movie, and his brother gets put into jail, even though Connie is more the one who wanted to do the bank robbery in the first place, and he sort of put his brother to go along with them. And so the movie does a good job at sort of chronicling their sort of complex relationship. And once Nick is put into jail, Connie does practically anything he can to free him. And just it really gets, as you go into the movie, it just gets worse and worse for him as he tries to save his brother from a hospital, but it turns out he saved the wrong person, another convict. And he's just continually on the run from the law. And the story is just very interesting and unfolds in a very intense way. And throughout it, you're sort of wondering whether you should sympathize with the main character or not, because he is indeed a criminal. But you can tell throughout the movie that he loves his brother, but the decisions he makes are oftentimes very questionable. And there's one point in the movie where he does something that, after that moment, you're either for him or against him, probably. It's like the one defining moment in the movie, and it's meant to be like that. The director's vision is very dark. He's very unforgiving in the movie, but the way the movie ends, I feel like, is very touching and very poignant and very fitting. Other things that work about this movie is its visual style. It has an unbelievable usage of lighting to give off like intensity and just make so many shots very memorable. Like there's a whole action scene that takes place at a carnival at night, and basically something goes wrong and they turn on all the carnival rides, and Connie's character is being chased through this haunted carnival ride, and it's just such an interesting juxtaposition. And yeah, the lighting is just very interesting to see in this movie. And I also like how it actually has this sort of connection to Of Mice and Men, because their relationship between Connie and Nick is very similar to George and Lenny, where Nick, the mentally disabled one, is always just messing things up for Connie, and so on, like Lenny does for George. And if you know the way Of Mice and Men goes, this story goes in a somewhat similar way, though it twists the formula. But I liked how it sort of alluded to that type of classic literature, which really kept it even more interesting on another level. So I think it's a really great movie. Loved it.
Interesting. Okay. Well, my number 8 is Dunkirk. I originally wasn't exactly 100% sure what I thought of this movie. I didn't particularly care for the main character. I didn't particularly care for any of the characters at first, because I felt as though it may have used war as an excuse to not develop its characters. But I've been thinking about this movie hard, because I was pretty sure at first that it wouldn't get into my top 10. But just after thinking about all the cinematography and the interlocking storylines, the sense of dread kind of actually brought me back to Saving Private Ryan. And it's, I've kind of come full circle on this movie. I really liked it. I still have my problems with it, of course, or else it wouldn't be my number 8, but I really liked Mark Rylance as Mr. Dawson. I really liked Tom Hardy, and and I really liked how did I forget his name already? I always forget his name.
Kenneth Branagh?
Yes, Kenneth Branagh. They don't even have him as like one of the main whatever. Yeah, Kenneth Branagh was great. This is the movie that introduced me to him, and Cillian Murphy coming back, seeing him in another Nolan movie was really interesting. And Harry Styles surprised me too in his role, honestly. So yeah, I really gained a respect for this movie because of its cinematography and because of its sense of reality and the sense of doom. And I'm glad that Nolan didn't really bar any punches from this movie, and I feel strongly as though it's a movie that'll be kept in time for sure. That's just my thoughts on it. I liked it quite a lot, and I think its cinematography and its directing style really just brought it up for me. But yeah.
Okay. My number 8 is The Disaster Artist, which, if you don't know, I think a lot of people have seen the previews for this movie probably, but if you don't know, it's about the making of this movie that's gotten this so bad it's good status called The Room, which is was directed and it starred and was produced by this guy named Tommy Wiseau, who is considered one of the most odd and interesting people out there. He just has such a odd personality, and everything about him just seems so weird. But because of that, just everyone is so interested in him, and everyone who has seen The Room has just been awed at just how mind-bogglingly bad it is in almost every way. Like, there's bad acting in it, it's badly shot, just nothing about it is good, but yet all of it is just done in such a way to where it almost turns good, because you can just sort of laugh at it, and you can almost admire it in a way because it was just made from scratch, and Tommy and his friend Greg were just not very experienced in the industry or anything like that. And this movie, The Disaster Artist, actually brings that idea to light more, showing how both Tommy and Greg were both just dreamers, really, who wanted to succeed in the world, in Hollywood, and succeed as filmmakers. But they struggled to, because the acting world is just very unforgiving, and they just had a hard time doing it. So eventually Tommy just asked Greg, what if we just make our own movie and show them all that we can do it on our own? And so they sort of do that. This movie is unbelievably funny. Perhaps the funniest performance I've seen from James Franco in my life. He plays Tommy Wiseau, and I really thought from the previews that I'd be distracted, because it was just weird to see James Franco in a wig. But by the time I was watching, by the first 15 minutes of the movie probably, I'd totally forgotten that he was even in the movie, because he just embodies Tommy's personality so freaking well, and just really makes him an interesting character to watch. Like, he has a lot of funny moments, but he never makes Tommy a punchline. It could have been so easy to just sort of make fun of him and make him out to be a sort of cardboard box thing, but his character is really fleshed out and really interesting. But actually, my favorite role in the movie comes from James Franco's brother, Dave Franco, who plays Tommy's friend Greg. The story is really from Greg's perspective, which works because Greg is a bit more of a relatable and understandable character, whereas Tommy Wiseau is definitely a bit more of an enigma. And also, this movie was based on the real-life Greg's book, which he wrote about this movie, which was also called The Disaster Artist, I believe. And Dave Franco really just did a great job at playing Greg, at making him a very multifaceted character, one who you understood why he had such a connection with Tommy, but you also understood later in the movie when he started to get frustrated with Tommy because Tommy wouldn't let him do anything else. Tommy got jealous when he got a girlfriend. Tommy got jealous when he started getting successful acting gigs. Like in the movie, for an example, they actually have Bryan Cranston in the movie, who was working on Malcolm in the Middle at that time, and he actually offers Greg a acting opportunity for Malcolm in the Middle for one of the episodes, and Tommy becomes jealous of that. So you see their friendship becoming complicated, but you also see that it's a sort of touching friendship that really just sort of is one that you can root for. I really liked the chemistry of these two. I mean, obviously, they're going to have chemistry because they're brothers, but they work so well off each other in the movie. Other highlights included, surprisingly, Seth Rogen. I'm usually not a big fan of Rogen, but he did actually pretty good work here as a sort of funny producer. And I also liked Alison Brie as Amber, who was Greg's girlfriend. She's played in some other movie, but I couldn't ever place where I recognized her from. But she was pretty good. She was really good in this movie, and Zac Efron also has quite a hilarious role to play in this movie too. So I think The Disaster Artist is a very funny movie, but it's also a very surprisingly touching movie about just sort of following your dreams no matter what other people might say, and the message is never presented in a silly or cliched way.
Interesting. Yeah, I still have to go see that movie.
I think you'd
really.
I think you'd like it. It's probably off.
Interesting to me that the movie about the making of a terrible movie is one of the highest rated critics movies I've seen this year, which is just interesting to me. But anyways, I don't know whether my number 7 will surprise you or not, but it's the Lego Batman movie.
That's an honorable mention for me.
Lego has been such a huge part of my life. When the Lego movie came out, we saw it like within the first 3 weeks or something. I was just so excited for that movie. And then the Lego Batman movie came out, and it stunned me, frankly. It's such a surprisingly it's such a surprisingly touching movie. It's also extremely hilarious, of course. These guys, man, the director is Chris McKay, and I don't know if he did the Lego movie, but boy, he knows how to do his stuff. Will Arnett did a fantastic job playing as Batman and Bruce Wayne. Ralph Fiennes was Alfred, and that was fantastic. Zach Galifianakis did amazing as the Joker, and their relationship just killed me so much. And man, everything about it, just the animation style, of course, is amazing. Every shot just looks so beautiful, like the Lego animation style. I'm so glad they chose to like animate it Lego style. It's just so amazing how they do it. Man, I can only imagine how long it takes them to make a freaking movie like that.
Yeah,
it's so well done. I'm glad they care about their product because it comes through clearly. Because it's like it transitions so well between like the hilariousness of Batman and Joker's relationship, and then the really surprisingly heavy moments of like Batman missing his parents and seriously considering becoming like a father to Robin. It's just such a phenomenal movie about like family and relationships and such, and it touched me in a very deep way. And of course I love Batman, so that's just one thing.
I mean, I can't speak to, I know this year Lego Ninjago movie got mixed reviews from both critics and audiences. I haven't seen it, so I can't really speak to it, but the fact that there have been 2 good, excellent, I'd say, Lego movies is just something that you wouldn't expect to be able to come out of your mouth. They're doing, literally both of these movies are promotions for products. They're like the biggest advertisement. And you could just so easily make it an advertisement, like the freaking Emoji Movie, which was an advertisement as well. But instead, these movies, the directors were just so passionate about making them more than just advertisements and making them actually have really good stories and fun characters and great gags and all that stuff. Like the Lego movie, when it came out, it was probably one of my top 3 favorite movies of the year, honestly.
I love the Lego movie.
I just loved the twists they put at the end. Don't want to reveal it, but it really just made that movie stand out to me all the more. And Lego Batman is just as good. Maybe a little less good, but very close. I loved Lego Batman movie as well. My number 7 is Split, which is the first M. Night Shyamalan movie in a long time that I'd say is a masterwork of his. The last movie I'd consider of his to be a masterpiece is probably Unbreakable, which I think, I know a lot of people call Signs also a great work from him, but I'm not as big on that.
Signs is garbage. I'm sorry.
I don't know if I'd call it garbage, but it's definitely not good. And The Visit was a little bit starting to get back to what he was good at, but after I thought about it more, I think I really sort of overrated it, and that was before I really was starting to be critical of movies anyway.
Can I say, IMDb, what are you doing making Split in 2016? Seriously. Fix it.
I think it got released early in some places, but no, it's a 2017 movie, sorry. But anyway, I mean, easily one of the most interesting horror movies to come out this year. And that's saying a lot, because there were a lot of good horror movies this year.
Oh, yes.
You'll be seeing a few more on my list. But this one just, I don't know. It was so creative and everything.
Very original.
I loved how it revealed its story very naturally into where you couldn't guess what was going to happen next. Like, you're trying to figure out James McAvoy's character throughout and exactly what he's all about. And man, James McAvoy gives one of the best, if not the best performances of the year. Even though this is low on my list, I think he gives
got
one
my
of the
performance of the year, question.
He's only slided out by one performance that I'll talk about later, but he gives very close to the best performance of the year. He plays 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 roles.
8 roles, yeah.
Prominently.
Yeah.
Technically, his character has 23 personalities, but there were 8 characters that he had to develop, which, as an actor myself, it's hard enough for me to develop one character to play. The fact that he was able to flesh out 8 different roles and make them all believable and different personalities, I mean, not many other actors can do something like that.
And yeah, you got to consider though, M. Night Shyamalan just started shooting Glass, which has been 17 years in the making apparently. So you can only imagine how long this movie may have been in production, and how long James McAvoy may have been developing his characters. It may have been for a long time.
It had to have been for a long time, because you can tell McAvoy was dedicated to bringing every one of these characters to life. And I loved all the characters. Hedwig is this child character who has this hilarious lisp voice. And he's sort of hilarious in a way, bringing out sort of the dark comedy vibe that this movie has, which actually works sort of well, and they don't overplay the dark comedy too much. I also really like Dennis, who's this sort of just very frightening character, the one that McAvoy plays the most, and it's fun to watch him play this character the most, because Dennis is probably the most grounded out of his characters. But my favorite is honestly Patricia, the female role that he plays, because she just has something else about her that makes her on a whole other level of frightening. And just anytime he was playing her, I was on the edge of my seat just wondering exactly what he was going to say. And Barry, the character he plays when he's meeting with this psychologist named Karen Fletcher, Barry's also a pretty interesting character. And I mean, all of them, they just have such distinct things about them, and I loved watching all of them. And speaking of the psychologist, I also thought Betty Buckley as Dr. Karen Fletcher was really good. She had a bit of a smaller role in the movie, but her supporting role was very important, and I liked what she contributed to the movie. And I also liked Anya Taylor-Joy as Casey Cook. She also played in The Witch in 2016, which, while I was a little mixed about The Witch overall, I thought she was the best part of that movie, and she's also a very good part of this one. And she does good as sort of the character that you sort of try to attach onto and sympathize with, because clearly it's hard to relate with McAvoy, even though he's the most intriguing character on screen. But just overall, a great movie with a lot of scary moments and an incredible climax, and just a really good developing of Anya Taylor-Joy's character as well as James McAvoy's. It's just, I could go back to this movie over and over again and still be awed by it.
Yeah. Well, look no further, because my number 6 is Split.
Okay.
I'll further talk about it and say that, for one, McAvoy unquestionably gets my performance of the year. I mean, like, Dennis and Patricia, and I found Crumb oddly interesting. But when he turns into the Beast, like, everything changes. The Beast is probably my personal favorite, just because he says some really good lines as the Beast, I think. And I liked Anya Taylor-Joy a lot, and Betty Buckley too. I felt strongly that this, even though I would say the last masterpiece of Shyamalan is The Sixth Sense, because I wasn't a huge fan of Unbreakable, but I really feel like Split brought Shyamalan back into the favor of the fans and in the favor of, like, the horror community. It was so good. Like everything about it was just so well done, and yeah, the only thing that was a little bit disappointing about it was the what you could call a twist, even though it wasn't too much of a twist. I'm just waiting to see Shyamalan do a twist like The Sixth Sense. And boy, if you haven't seen The Sixth Sense, you need to stop watching this podcast and watch that.
Yeah, he definitely still hasn't done anything quite like The Sixth Sense, but it's honestly sort of hard to match up to that movie.
To a masterpiece, yeah.
I mean, doing that so early in your directorial career is both a blessing and a curse, because
yeah.
everyone is expecting you to make a movie like that, but also you're going to be remembered for that movie too, so it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay. Are you done talking about it?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, you basically said everything that I'd agree with. But yeah, I just rank it a little bit higher because everything about James McAvoy just made me so happy.
Yeah,
in this movie.
yeah.
He already like surprised me with his performance as Charles Xavier, but this one just solidified him so much.
Yeah. My number 6 is 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which I just saw this week, but I loved it so freaking much, so it already made a spot way higher. And keep in mind, there's a few movies I've seen this year that I want to see, so my list could change within the next week, but as it is right now, I think it's pretty well set. But 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, it's won, I think, 24 awards so far. It's like the third most award-winning movie of the year so far, and after watching it, I could see why. It revolves around this mother who has these 3 billboards, which she puts very definitive statements on, and very brave statements on, asking this police force why they didn't ever solve her daughter's murder. And she sort of calls them out as corrupt, basically, which I think the message they're trying to give is clearly supposed to apply to now with all the controversy of corrupt police and all that. But they do it in this movie in a very interesting way, to where they show that she's not necessarily completely right in her beliefs, and they show multifaceted humanity in all these characters. Like, they're living in this very country south part of their community. It's like a redneck country almost, but they don't ever make these rednecks just horrible people. Like, for an example, Sam Rockwell's character of Dixon, he's seemed for a lot of the movie like the most obvious redneck stereotype. Like, he hated black people. He was just spoken a very over-the-top country accent. He was always just a bit of an idiot, but the movie just sort of twists that around and makes him have quite a bit of a redemptive arc, which I thought was very touching and very beautiful, actually. And then you've got Frances McDormand in the main role as the mother Mildred, and man, I've never seen her in a movie before until this, but she knocks this role out of the park. I mean, every moment she's on the screen, she really just commands your attention. She's playing this very tough character who just doesn't take anything and will say whatever comes to her mind, just like any other character in this movie will. Sometimes when watching this movie, you'll just have your jaw drop open at what the words that'll come out of people's mouths and the things that they say. But they have no filter in this town, and it's clear that that's how this town works from the way the movie establishes it. And it works well because it makes all the characters seem very honest and very open with each other. But yeah, McDormand nails her role as Mildred. I wouldn't be surprised if she gets nominated for an Oscar for this role. In fact, she's been nominated for a Golden Globe, I'm pretty sure, which I think means she'll probably get nominated for an Oscar too. She really just nails the role. And Rockwell was really great too. I know he's a pretty well-known actor. I haven't seen him in much either, but I really liked him. But honestly, my favorite was Woody Harrelson, who played the sheriff, Willoughby, which is sort of the chief she's calling out as not really doing a good job on this investigation. But Willoughby never comes across as a villain character. In fact, he's probably the most sympathetic and human character, because you see him dealing with cancer and just trying to care for his family and stuff like that. And his relationship with Mildred is actually sort of like they really care for one another. So it sort of pains her to have to do this to him, but she has to because she cares about solving her daughter's murder, obviously. But I really like the themes that this movie brings in, like about how far do you go to take vengeance for something, or how far do you go to keep this bitterness inside your heart. And the movie just explores that, and it can get rough in the ways it explores it. This movie doesn't shy away from violent stuff, but I mean, it has a surprisingly good redemptive ending that actually feels very earned, and I think you need to watch it as well. I think you'd like it.
Yeah,
it is superb.
Yeah. Well, my number 5 movie is Baby Driver. I think there's a lot of, I mean, you basically said everything I said about the movie as my, but my favorite part about the movie was unquestionably the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Which, it was just such an enjoyable, I mean, it was a summer movie, so like, but it was such a different type of movie. Like, I've never really seen a movie quite like this one. Honestly, you know, it's a, whew, man, it is a, it's an adventure, and it's got the perfect 3-act structure, which as a movie maker, of course, just satisfies. But Ansel Elgort does amazing. I love John Hamm, and I actually really, I really liked Isaac Gonzalez's role. I really liked her, actually, surprisingly. And I loved Kevin Spacey, of course. And yeah, I mean, everything. I mean, like the exposition, and then just setting up the entire story. I mean, like, storytelling wise, it's also just so well done. And I think it definitely has a place in history.
Yeah, it is good. It is good for sure. My number 5 pick is a movie that I feel deserved a lot more love this year. It Comes at Night. I mean,
I could talk about It Comes at Night for my entire life. And
okay, well, since I have a feeling you're going to talk about it soon,
very soon, actually,
I'm gonna try to not steal the whole conversation. But I mean, I was just sort of, well, half surprised and half not surprised at the reaction it got from audiences. It was quite divided. Lots of people seemed to think this movie was going to be something else based off the trailer, and I actually thought that too. But when people saw that it wasn't quite what the trailer presented it to be, many just called out the movie as pretentious bullcrap. And that it really didn't mean anything and nothing happened in it.
Boy,
but
people need to stop.
I couldn't disagree more. This is one of the most interesting horror movies I've seen in quite some time. Just utterly fascinating, in my opinion.
It's only 91 minutes.
Yeah, it's pretty short, but that shortness keeps it very tense and very just white-knuckled. There's hardly a moment where you're just sort of resting with what is happening in the movie.
Since I'll tell you it's my number 4, we can just talk about it for a while.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, yeah. You know, from the moment this movie starts, you're just aware that there's something wrong. And I don't know what to say about this movie. Like, it blew me out of the water. I was almost positive this was going to be my number 1 movie of the year.
I thought it
for
would
a
be for
long
a time.
The
fact that it's coming at number 4 for you and number 5 for me says a lot about the quality of movies this year.
Yeah, it's Kelvin Harrison Jr. just nailed it as Travis. I really loved his character, and Carmen Ejogo as Sarah. And man, the cast was just astonishing. But there is, I think my runner-up for performance of the year goes to Joel Edgerton. He chilled me to the bone with his performance.
He has, don't really want to reveal too much of this movie, but he has quite a complicated and hard role to play. Like, he has a lot on his plate to work with.
And like, I specifically, I specifically remember every moment of the movie. It's like it's so like it's such a movie that you just like you see it and and you like you see everything as it is. It's like such a stripped down movie. Like, oh man, and
and I mean
that ending, like I remember we were speechless the entire credits. Like we usually talk about the movie during the credits. Nope.
Yeah,
nope.
Because the ending was just so well done.
It's
like
stunning,
unbelievably haunting in what they did. And you know it comes at night. You never figure out what the it is.
Yeah.
But
that's not a spoiler because it's actually what happens in the movie. You never know what it is.
Yeah, but I think that might be the best thing about the movie. That makes it all the more frightening. You
it's
never
so
know
mysterious
what this entity is, and the entity could even be a metaphor. I quite honestly believe it is a metaphor.
I'm fully and completely sure that it's a metaphor.
Because that's the way the movie builds up, in my opinion. It builds this thing up to be a metaphor.
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole movie is like a commentary on loneliness. And, like, the effect of loneliness, you know?
And also the effect of what humans will do when they're put into a desperate situation.
Yeah, definitely.
Because the characters in this are definitely put into that. They're living in this clearly apocalyptic world. That is the one thing about this movie that is sort of clear. One of the things about this movie that is clear. They're living in a world apocalyptic where things have gone wrong. They're having to burn, like, sick bodies and stuff like that.
And it makes you think that the sickness is the thing.
Yeah.
But I won't say anything more about the sickness. But, you know.
And, the character development in this movie is on point, too, in my opinion. A lot of fascinating conversations. A lot of them remind me of Walking Dead in a way, with how how the characters talk with one another and how they build their characters, which... I'm talking sort of early Walking Dead, so I think that's a compliment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it comes at night. It's a movie you sort of have to experience for yourself.
It's only an hour and 31 minutes, but you're basically fully invested in the world, like every moment. Like I was definitely fully invested in the world and the characters.
Yep.
But yeah, so I guess
number 3. Now.
Yeah, my number 3 is War for the Planet of the Apes. Man, the new Planet of the Apes trilogy. Just like from Rise of the Planet of the Apes to Dawn, this series just absolutely blew me out of the water. Like Andy Serkis, I'll keep on saying it until I die. Andy Serkis is the greatest motion capture actor to live.
Oh yeah, undoubtedly.
Because he's so completely like he devotes himself to his character completely. Like he devotes himself to Caesar constantly, and Caesar's development as a character is just fascinating. And Andy Serkis does full justice to Planet of the Apes. The movie is beautiful looking. It's just such a phenomenal thing, and I really liked Luca's character and Maurice. I've always really liked Maurice.
Maurice.
For some reason, I actually really liked the inclusion of Bad Ape, even though his character kind of annoyed me at first. I did, even though the first 2 movies were like really, really, really dark. I did like how this one kind of had a comedic edge to it, even though the comedic edge did not last long at all. Like, it's such a dark movie, and it's so well done. And Woody Harrelson as the Colonel is quite chilling. Yeah. And they really did pull everything perfectly for the finale, and I think the series ended off on a perfect note. This is where my top 3 movies are all 5 out of 5s. It's just a matter of personal perspective. I think War for the Planet of the Apes is a perfect movie in every way, shape, and form. Like the action sequences and the acting, everything, just beautifully done. Beautifully done.
I guess I'll talk about my 4 and 3 now, since we're sort of off. So my number 4, and as I thought about this movie more, and as I watched it a second time, it just sort of increased for me significantly, is Dunkirk. Like you, I wasn't too sure about this movie the first time I saw it. because I do prefer movies that have character development more than just constant a barrage of action and stuff like that. But something about Dunkirk, and perhaps it's because Christopher Nolan is one of my favorite directors, if not my favorite director of all time, just really just blew me away. I mean, I've never seen... No movie this year was quite the visual spectacle. Well, almost no movie this year had quite the visual spectacle that Dunkirk did. I mean, everything in this movie just looked so cool and so fascinating and just beautiful in a way, but also disturbing when it needed to. Like, this movie was a visual spectacle, but it was also a very harrowing war movie. Like, even watching this movie, I forgot that it was actually PG-13 and not R, because this feels like an R-rated movie throughout. It's intense, and every moment, almost, because of how well contained and short this is in comparison to Nolan's other movies. It really helps make this movie feel a lot more intense and a lot more like you're just in the moment. And I appreciate how well this movie does at, like any other Nolan movie, how well it does at shifting between time arcs. Like there's the longest one, which is the one at sea, and then there's the one on the airplanes, and then there's the one on the boat with Mark Rylance's character. And all of them are taking place over different times, but the movie does a very clever job at showing where the times sort of combine. Like in one scene with Mr. Dawson, you can see the airplanes flying by a ship, or in the airplane scene, you can see where at the end where the planes are flying by as everyone on the ship is returning home. It's very clever how Nolan does it, and it doesn't ever make the movie feel too confusing.
You see, yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that Nolan usually does his perspective time things really well, but I feel like Dunkirk didn't give a clear indication of what type of time we were in, because I felt consistently confused as to when they were, and usually I'm pretty clear on where things were. That was really my only problem, was that the pacing and the transitions just felt a little bit unclear.
Yeah, and I'm thinking almost that Nolan wasn't really concerned with how the time worked. In fact, he was sort of trying to show how the war just sort of had this timeless, ongoing feel, was what I think he might have been going for.
That is,
which I think worked well for the movie. Also, even from my first time watching, I did like most of the performances. I thought that I really liked Fionn Whitehead as Tommy. He has the least amount of dialogue. I mean, that's not saying much because there's not that much dialogue in the film anyway.
Yeah, there's
very minimal amounts. But he mainly has to act through his expressions, and I think he does a good job at doing that. I also, like you, I really love Mark Rylance as Mr. Dawson. I think he's really good. But probably my favorite, honestly, is Barry Keoghan. I don't know if that's how you say it, as George. George is not even like a soldier character. He's sort of a common character, a commoner from like the middle class, but he has the most interesting and heroic arc of the whole movie, and I really liked learning about him. And I also liked Tom Glenn Carney as Peter, who is George's friend. They both, their chemistry in this movie was very good. And Tom Hardy as Farrier, I mean, holy crap.
Yeah.
Tom Hardy is one of the most underrated actors of right now.
Well, he's finally starting to get like really noticed.
He is finally. Yeah. It took way too long. But once again, I mean, like in several other movies, he shows just how well he can act just through his eyes. He doesn't even have to say anything. His eyes can give all his emotion, and I think the way his character arc worked was very emotional and very powerful as well.
I loved his character.
Yeah, and I liked Kenneth Branagh. He wasn't on the screen for that much, but he gave a very emotional performance as well. I loved his reaction to when all the ships came to save them. I mean, he didn't even have to say anything, and you could tell what he was exactly thinking in that scene. And Harry Styles also surprised me. I didn't expect him to do that well, but he had one of the best scenes in the movie. So yeah, that's my number 4.
Mm-hmm.
And then my number 3, which my top 3 were so hard to rank, is Get Out.
Interesting.
I thought that might be one of yours.
It's my number 2.
Oh, okay. Well.
Wow.
Anyway, yeah. Once again, I'll try not to dominate the conversation, and I think once we get to number 1, we can talk about that one together. Because I think.
We know.
But I mean, I loved this movie from the first time watching it. It's just unbelievably good movie in every sense of the word. Just right from the beginning, you get the feeling for what its theme is going to be, and perhaps the most compelling portrayal of how racism is affecting modern day America. And it does it in a way to where it doesn't distance either side. Like, I mean, it's clearly characters like Chris, who Daniel Kaluuya plays, who you're supposed to sympathize with, and I think it just does a good job at showing what racism is without making any one character a stereotype or anything. And the fact that this movie has earned the most awards out of any movie this year, it speaks volumes to how good it is. Yeah. It's earned 30 awards so far, and I think it'd be a great injustice for it to not get nominated for any Oscars, but I think it will, and I think it'll earn a lot of Oscars. Yes. I have a feeling it'll dominate the Oscars this year.
I hope this will be the one movie that I will be so on board for dominating, because it deserves it.
I think it will. Because this is one of the highest rated movies of the year, and it's one of the highest rated horror movies also, and it's already being called one of the best horror movies of all time, which I can agree with that assessment. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't called a horror movie a masterpiece probably since the first Insidious, but I think Get Out is the horror masterpiece of our generation, probably. It's of the 2010s, I think it's the horror masterpiece, and it's
and I mean, it's such a creative movie too. Like, there's this sunken place scene in it which is still ingrained in my memory, and
they unquestionably got some what's the word I'm looking for? Inspiration from Insidious.
Yeah.
I think.
Without a doubt.
I don't know.
Without a doubt. And the scene where Chris is being tortured by watching this TV is quite haunting and quite interesting. The auction scene is bone chilling.
That is just so
what it represents and everything.
Yeah.
And I mean, people call this movie a satire, which, I can see the satire elements in it, but it is a horror movie first and foremost.
Yes.
It is meant to be horrifying, and it is. And, it doesn't ever force scares or do that many jump scares. In fact, I don't remember a single jump scare in the movie. Maybe one. But other than
the
that,
famous scene. The famous running scene.
Yeah, but
that didn't even jump scare, really.
Even that but even that scene, all the scares had a purpose. They weren't there to just scare you. They were there to further the themes of the movie. And performances were great across the board. I love Daniel Kaluuya. First saw him in Black Mirror, and he was great in that, and he's just as good in this. Really just gives such a standout performance. Another one that I'd consider to be one of the best of the year. Caleb Landry Jones as the son of the White family. Jeremy Armitage, he was my favorite out of the Armitages, actually, because he's the one who makes it known just how evil his family is, and his menace is just sort of undeniable. And I like. And
it like shows just how the family is just passing down this stuff with no problem. It's just such a creepy sentiment.
Yeah, and let's see. Where? Oh, yeah. But my favorite role was probably Lil Rel Howery as Rod Williams.
Yeah.
Who offers some of the best comedic moments I've seen in any movie this year. He was a riot to watch.
Yeah.
Just sort of giving this commentary, which is sort of reminiscent about Scream, about like horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was making the movie sort of self-knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, I felt like through him, director Jordan Peele's personality was coming out
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
that was so Peele.
That seems like something Peele would say in a Key and Peele sketch.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Which, yeah, by the way, this is directed by Jordan Peele, if you didn't know, who's known more for his comedy. But now, after this movie, he's clearly going to be getting to known for his superb directing. Because if this is a movie that he's establishing his directing with, then I can't wait to see where he goes next.
I mean, like, I already had a huge respect for Peele from Key and Peele.
Mm-hmm.
Like, his work in that is just phenomenal. I had no clue because he both wrote and directed it. Like, I knew he could write.
Yeah.
But I did not know he could direct such a phenomenal cast of characters.
Yeah.
And make such a chilling story.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, that Little Real Howery moment was just so beautifully hilarious.
Yep.
And the Armitage family kind of reminded me of the Baker family from Resident Evil 7 in a way.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying.
It's different things, but the twist was so well done. It was just such a snap of a moment, but like it just one moment, yay, next moment, oh, everyone's against him.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yep.
Daniel Kaluuya's his performance was just amazing.
Yeah. The only one I was a little underwhelmed by was Allison Williams as Rose, which is Chris's girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
I still am not the hugest fan, but I mean, she's not awful, but she's not good compared to the rest of the cast.
I think I'm going to have to say the highlight of the film was Marcus Henderson as Walter.
Oh, yep.
He did a phenomenal job,
yep,
I felt.
Yeah, he was good.
He was such an interesting character.
Yeah.
And he had that famous scene, of course, but I felt like his character was just so interesting, so unique. But yeah, I mean, definitely a 5 out of 5 with no competition.
I'd still say it's probably a 4.5 out of 5 for me, but very close to a 5. Like almost there. If it wasn't for Rose being a character that I didn't care for too much, it'd be a 5 out of 5 probably. But yeah. So are you just counting that you're talking for?
Yeah, that's my number 2. I would just say that my 5 out of 5 is because I felt like Rose's. You know what? Never mind. I'm not gonna. Never mind. Nope. That's spoilers and.
Oh, okay. Well, my number 2, I guess I might as well go ahead. And then we could get to the number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Is War for the Planet of the Apes. I knew that our top 3 would probably be very similar to one another. So I'm not gonna really try to go way too into it because you've said a lot of good things about it. Like, I mean, Andy Serkis is just indescribably good in this movie. I'm glad that he finally sort of got a starring role through these movies because he's never gotten that, and I think he's fully deserving of it, as these movies show. He's just capable of delivering a variety of emotions. He makes this ape character who you couldn't expect to sympathize with entirely human and entirely just so interesting. One of the coolest characters I've seen in any movie. I love Caesar as a character. And I think his character growth throughout the 3 movies is just unbelievably good. Like, he's so different from where he started in Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
And his character arc is just very well done. About as perfect of a character arc as you could get. And yeah, Woody Harrelson is great as a Colonel too. Just gives a very menacing performance, but you also scarily understand where he's coming from, which is what all three of these movies do well, is that they make you understand the villains and what their motivation is.
There's no villain that will be as chilling as Koba, I don't think.
Yeah.
Because Koba's performance in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes just blew me away.
He was frightening.
I still, I don't know, it's so hard to compare Dawn and War, but I loved Dawn because of Koba.
Yeah, and I even love Rise because James Franco just surprised me with the performance he did really good. Yeah. These movies are so hard to rank as to which one I like better.
Man, I'd have to watch them all 3 in a row probably, but then I'd probably think they got better and better.
Yeah, I suppose I'd say I might like War the best, but it's not by a significant margin at all.
Yeah.
which speaks to the strength of this trilogy. One of the best movie
I
trilogies.
think I've given each of them a perfect rating.
Yeah, I think I'd have to as well, honestly. I think I'd have to. Other roles that I really liked was Amaya Miller as the kid Nova. She doesn't speak at any moment in the movie, but she really just does a good job at emoting through her expressions. One of the best child roles of the year. I also liked Bad Ape. And Maurice was probably one of the biggest highlights of the movie as well. And I just thought this movie's thematic art about it not being a literal war, but more like a war of heart, like a war of just Caesar trying to figure out what type of whether he's wanting to be more human or more savage is so interesting. And the way this movie builds up to make the apes even more human than humans themselves is quite interesting and fascinating.
And I think another thing about this series that really just puts it in the map of trilogies, like I'd almost compare it to the epicness, to the amazingness of like the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
No doubt.
I think it's just because it does so well with movies. It's so hard to make a movie that both develops character and has incredible action and has incredible cinematography and incredible writing and incredible acting. And I feel like the Planet of the Apes trilogy really had really good calm moments, really good touching heart moments, and then it had some blistering action scenes that just defined it. I think the producers, the whole crew, the whole writing crew and everything, they just nailed it with the entire trilogy.
Yeah, for sure. And this one actually probably had the least amount of action in it, but it still felt maybe the most intense because of just all the emotion, the raw emotion that was going throughout the whole movie. Because you can just feel Caesar's unbridled anger and unbridled sorrow for all that he loses. And just his ending, about the most perfect ending you could have for a character, and a bit of a tearjerker.
I didn't expect it. I really wasn't ready.
Yeah.
But it's the perfect ending.
Yeah, great movie trilogy. Incredibly criminally underrated.
Yeah, criminally underrated. I mean, like, I know critics actually really liked it overall, as far as I understand, but Warfare of the Planet of the Apes was just severely, just like critics were like, nah, and like, just shut up, critics. No one cares.
Critics were actually very positive about this. It was more the audience that was.
Well, audience, shut up.
And the movie didn't have a good opening, and that goes for this number one pick, which I think we should just say it together on three. What our number one pick is.
1, 2, 3. Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
Yep. 1, 2, 3.
Blade Runner 2049.
Yep.
No competition.
Easily for both of us. You start.
I don't know where to start. Before I start, I want to say, so the text scenes in like the original Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Observer got influence from that.
Oh yeah.
You know the beginning part of Observer?
Yeah. All over Observer.
That I figured that out like instantly in that. But yeah. I don't know where to start. I don't know where to start with this movie. From the beginning to the end, it's a fascinating movie to watch. It's a fascinating movie to think about. It's such a thought-provoking movie.
Yeah.
And it's one of those movies that like the audience and critics just don't appreciate, because it's not that critics didn't appreciate it because it got really good critic ratings, but it's just that nobody went to see it because nobody's patient enough to sit through a nearly 3-hour movie.
Yep.
But man, I felt like there was no moment where I wasn't intrigued. I was sitting on the edge of my seat most of the time, and like I don't remember ever seeing Ryan Gosling in a movie before. If I have, then I'm sure I've seen him somewhere, but if this is the first movie where I see Ryan Gosling, then I definitely want to see more with him because his performance as K is just astounding. He has such a calm vibe and such a bizarrely interesting character.
Yeah.
But like, man, he is just wow. And I won't take over the entire conversation, but I will say that it's hard for me to say whether James McAvoy gets my performance of the year or whether Harrison Ford gets my performance of the year, because this is probably an extremely unpopular opinion by this point, but I think Blade Runner 2049 has my favorite Harrison Ford performance of all time.
Really?
Yeah, I think he just nails it with like the grizzled war veteran Blade Runner type vibe to his character, and I think his character is fascinatingly fleshed out from how he was already really well developed in the original one. But yeah, there's nothing bad I can say about this movie, the cinematography and everything. I'll let you continue from there, but there's nothing bad to say about it. Yeah. Nothing.
I mean, this movie is just a visual, unbelievable amalgamation of just so many interesting images. Like, image after image, you're just sitting back going, wow. Wow.
Like when he enters the city from the original Blade Runner, like covered in sand, I was like, oh my gosh, this is cool.
Yeah.
Visually, yeah.
Yeah. And the layer of Neander Wallace, played by Jared Leto, I think that has some of the best visuals of the movie, some of the most just, like, you feel like the reverence of the place and just how important it is. Like, every shot in this movie, you feel that there's something important and epic going on. Like, you can feel the importance of the movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love Ryan Gosling's performance as well. He's come to be one of my favorite actors working right now, if not my favorite. Just in every movie he's in, his acting work gets better and better, in my opinion. Like, I loved him in La La Land last year. I also love him in this movie called Drive. And I mean, in this one, he gives probably his best performance of his career so far. Kay is such a interesting character. He's a replicant, which means he's a robot, but he shows so much human emotion and like his reaction to first hearing that he might be this replicant who's also partly human. I mean, his reaction to that is just so perfect. Just the emotions that pour out of his face. It's fascinating to watch. And yeah, it's hard to describe his performance because he embodies his character so perfectly in every minute. I also, like you, I really like Harrison Ford's performance as well. He has a bit more of a supporting role than I was initially expecting in the movie. But every moment he's on screen, he just nails it, and really his character has a lot of interesting and cool work to do. I also really like Robin Wright as Lieutenant Joshi. She really plays this tough-as-nails soldier, but once you see this other side of her character, you really turn around to liking her even more. And
I mean, Robin Wright is a fantastic actress, so she knows how to do every part of her character correctly, I think.
I also liked Anna de Armas's haunting performance of Joy. Just a great villain performance and just so interesting with what she had to do. But the performance that surprised me the most was Jared Leto as Neander Wallace.
Yeah.
I've never been a big fan of Jared Leto as an actor or as a singer. He's in this band called 30 Seconds to Mars that I'm not a huge fan of. But as an actor, I've not liked him that much. He gave a performance of the Joker that's one of my least favorite performances to date. But, I mean, in this movie, wow. He really gives quite a good villain performance, making his character quite interesting, and you can actually sort of understand what he's saying, but then it becomes creepy once you realize he has like a god complex.
I was hoping we'd get to see Wallace, the character, and boy, do we get to see him. Like, we get to see exactly how deep into itself this company is. Like, it's just, this company is so, like, we're doing something right, but yeah.
Yeah, and there's so many like tiny performances in this movie. Like you've got Dave Bautista's role at the beginning
Mhm.
as Sapper Morton, or you've got Sylvia Hoek's role as Love, and even the small performances in this movie are all just really, really good.
They contribute to the atmosphere of the movie so well.
Yeah, like I loved Bautista's role. Like I loved watching him for the brief time he was
Mhm.
on screen. But I mean, clearly this is Gosling and Harrison Ford's movie, more Gosling's movie because
Yeah.
he just owns it. He has to be on screen pretty much all the time, and he gives a powerful, riveting performance to watch. And man, I love Denis Villeneuve as a director.
Mhm.
I loved his movie Arrival, and I love his other movies too. This is probably one of his best, if not his best, in my opinion. Um, and yeah, I mean, visual spectacle of a movie due to him and Ridley Scott working together. Just a fascinatingly written movie with powerful things about like what it means to be human and stuff like
Mhm.
that. Yeah, there's not a whole lot else to be said about the movie. I think I can say it's probably one of my top 10 movies of all time already. It's one of the first movies I can say in a long time that I would want to show to other younger generations, just to show them this was made when I was alive. This was made when I was young, and I'm glad that this was made at such an important time. And yeah, it's such an important movie, and I think it needs to be watched. In my opinion.
Yeah, I do really, I mean, like, this movie came out at exactly the right time. It's, I think it's really interesting how the original one was made in the 80s and it predicted something literally 30 years later. And now we're about to be in the time almost that the original one envisioned. And now this one is predicting a time 30 more years later. So it's just really interesting to see. Man, it is a fascinating commentary on the human condition.
Yeah.
And that's what I really liked about it. And honestly, like, man, Denis Villeneuve just like nailed it so much.
Yeah, the everything about the movie just works absolutely perfectly. There's not one element that feels out of place, not one performance that's bad. Just, I mean, it's perfect. If I could give a movie a 6 out of 5, this is one that I would. For
Yeah,
sure.
I say that a lot of my love goes to Ridley Scott because he was one of the multiple executive producers. But you can oddly see that he probably had a lot of talk over this movie because it's such a Ridley Scott cinematography.
Oh yeah,
movie.
you can definitely tell.
Even though he didn't have like full power over it, it's like you can see it so clearly. It's man.
If you haven't seen this movie, I mean, what are you doing with your life?
Yeah,
You should
and
see it.
I'll say Hampton Fancher, who did the screenplay, just nailed it with the writing and the music. The music was just so epic.
Oh, the soundtrack, yes, so good.
Like the soundtrack had that like space epic type feel. It was just so well done.
Yeah.
But yeah, Blade Runner 2049, movie of the year with no competition.
And one of the best movies of all time.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be. I'm definitely gonna. This will be one of those movies that I'll watch like every week or so, and then I'll start watching every day or so.
Yeah. Once it comes out on DVD, you better best bet we're getting it.
Oh yeah, it's such a beautifully done movie.
Yep.
Like the poster is almost as beautiful as the entire movie itself.
Yes, I love the poster.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, people, why didn't you go see it? You all, my gosh, I hate people.
This movie made $31 million in its opening. That is a horrible opening. Luckily, it made enough money for it to make another movie, but it deserved a much better opening weekend.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it was released at a time where the box office was just weak in general.
Yeah.
Like
we had
October
record low box offices.
October was a terrible month for box office.
Yeah.
And I mean, they couldn't have predicted that, but I'm really glad that they are going to be able to make another one.
Yeah, I hope they do. I really do.
I'm excited to see what Dennis and the crew does with it. And I hope they keep Ryan Gosling, and I hope Harrison Ford. I feel terrible saying this, but I hope Harrison Ford lives long enough to be in the next one.
Of course, if they don't make another one, I think this movie is fine enough to stand on its own.
It had a very,
well.
very good ending, very fitting ending for the series. And I think it was really interesting how the plot with Harrison Ford's character having like a daughter, and it's just so interesting to me. Everything about it.
But if they make another one, this is one of the few things where I can say that I have faith that they make yet another good one, because Denis Villeneuve has not made a single bad movie in my opinion.
If they give him the helm again, then I will definitely be ready for it.
Anyway,
but I think the two alone stand alone enough. But if they can make another one as good as this one, which is entirely not possible,
no.
This is such one of those movies that like there's always that movie that ends up being just like the movie that defines a year, and I think Blade Runner 2049 defined this year in terms of how far like humanity has come with cinematography and with all of its stuff. Like, it's such a slow moving movie, but yet it just envelops you in the characters and in the story and in the plot so much, and that's something I love about movies, and it's something that movies kind of do rarely nowadays, but I think this is one of those standout movies that really focuses on character and plot a lot.
I mean, this movie reminded me why I love watching movies. Which, I mean, I always love watching movies. I always know that in the back of my head, but this one just sort of brought it out again after watching it, just sitting there looking at the credits. I was like, this is why I go to the movie theater. This is the experience I go for. This is the experience I hope for anytime I go into a movie.
Yeah.
And you hardly ever get it, which makes movies like this that much more of a gift.
Yeah.
So.
Can I say, whatever genius came up with the name Blade Runner, that is one of the coolest names
It's based on a book. I can't remember.
It's based on like, I know it's based on a book. Yeah, the book has a really bizarre name. I don't remember. It's like, it's a bizarre name. I don't know.
Do androids dream of electric sheep?
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Interesting.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah, that sounds right. I knew it was really weird. But yeah.
Okay, well, do you want to give your honorable mentions?
Yeah. I mean, those are the movies that I really felt impacted by. My honorable mentions would probably go to Wonder Woman, which was a surprisingly good DC movie, even though I still gave it like a 3 out of 5.
Yeah, it wasn't as good as people built it up to be.
Yeah,
I get the hype that it was a woman superhero movie, and I think it's good that young girls have a superhero to look up to. I think it's good on that. But that novelty alone doesn't make a movie good.
Yeah, I do. I liked the movie a lot because of Gal Gadot, and then the guy who played Lupin.
Chris Pine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coming back.
Yeah.
And Chris Pine I liked a lot too. And I initially liked that movie. Even after watching it, I made the weird statement, because I was watching it with my roommates. I made the weird statement that I might like it better than The Dark Knight Rises, but after saying that, I was like, what am I saying? This is perfectly. This is average. This is an average movie at best. Yeah. I mean, like, I can say because I enjoyed Bill Skarsgård's character so much that it would be an honorable mention.
Yeah, that's a good honorable mention.
Just because, I mean, like, I'm a huge horror fan, and it is one of those.
Yeah, it was an enjoyable movie.
I did really like it, and I think, I mean, like, Bill Skarsgård's performance just shot that movie up the moon. Yeah, like,
his performance was good.
Probably if Spider-Man: Homecoming hadn't come out this year, it would have been probably my number 10.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, just Bill Skarsgård. I mean, like, I didn't stop talking about him that entire night, I'm pretty sure. Like, and the kids actually did really good too.
Yeah.
But yeah, those would be my only 2 honorable mentions, really. Yeah.
I have a few honorable.
Oh wait, no, there was an anime movie that came out this year. I think it was this year. I hope it was this year, else I'm going to sound like an idiot. shoot, why? Yeah, it came out this year. It's called Your Name.
I need to see that.
Yeah, it was actually surprisingly good. Like, I'm not a huge fan of anime, but this is like the highest grossing anime film of all time. It got $355 million.
Wow.
Worldwide. It's a very interesting, fascinating film. It's very sad, very dark. It's I really liked it. The director Makoto Shinkai is apparently really famous in Japan for making. It's like time travel, and almost sort of. It's like it takes place in two different time zones, but you don't know it until the end, which is really
interesting. I'll have to watch that.
It's really good, surprisingly. And once again, IMDb got it wrong and says it's out in 2016. It probably got released in 2016 in Japan.
I'm guessing, it got early release.
Yeah, it was limited in theaters, so I was lucky to see it in theaters. It's real good, though. Those are my honorable mentions.
Okay. I have quite a few honorable mentions. One of mine, which I just saw recently, is Wind River. The stars Jeremy Renner, the guy who plays Hawkeye.
I remember seeing the ads for that one.
It's an excellent movie. I think if I'd seen it earlier and had more time to process it, it may have made my top 10. But it's about Jeremy Renner's character is like a hunter, and he goes to this Indian reservation. Well, he lives on this Indian reservation, which is a place where his daughter died. And he's basically helping the cops investigate this murder of this this Native American girl who it seems got raped and died. And the movie is basically, while it is sort of a cop movie, it's also sort of a commentary on how Native Americans are treated in society now. And it doesn't ever, and sort of in a similar way to like Get Out, it doesn't ever shove its message down your throat. And it actually shows a message of very haunting and gripping ways. And I think Renner's performance is probably the best I've seen from him. I'm usually not a big fan of him as an actor, but he did quite well in this movie. Another honorable mention for me is the Lego Batman movie. Very enjoyable movie. Loved the comedy in it, and just the fact that a movie about Legos, once again, could just be so good.
I never imagined Legos were such a huge part of my childhood, and I never imagined I'd be like basically living out my childhood fantasies of Lego storylines. Yeah, because like I used to do that all the time with the Lego storylines.
Another honorable mention of mine goes to Raw. This movie is a French movie, actually, but I just saw it getting all sorts of attention because there's cannibalism in it. But basically, it's not as over the top crazy as I thought it was going to be. It still is crazy in some ways, but this movie, I mean, it starts out telling the story about this girl who has a eating disorder, and she's a vegetarian. She doesn't eat anything else, and she never really knows why she can't eat anything else because her parents sort of forced a vegetarianism on her. She never wanted to be one, but she goes to this school. This boarding school where her sister goes to, and it sort of unleashes this appetite in her that she never knew existed.
Well, that's great.
That's all I'll say about the movie.
Lovely.
I think you'd like it. It's it's just crazy what happens in it, but it's so interesting as well, and quite frightening, in not a torture pornish way, which is what I thought the movie might be, but it's not. Another honorable mention of mine goes to Lady Macbeth. This movie is not based on the Shakespeare novel, but it has a lot of Shakespearean stuff going on in it. It revolves around this woman who gets named Catherine. She gets into this forced marriage because she's in like Victorian times, so she gets married to this rich husband who doesn't really love her, and she doesn't love him either. And basically this husband goes off for a while, and she sort of, since she's the only other person there, she sort of becomes head of the house, and she meets this boy, this commoner, who she begins to just have an affair with, and things go very wrong from there. Yeah, it's quite an interesting movie. and I really liked it. And how it sort of made her character like Lady Macbeth was also quite intriguing. And my final honorable mention goes to Sword Art Online, the Ordinal Scale, an anime movie also. I find it interesting that we both have an anime movie. This movie was good. I think I rated it too high on my first watch, maybe because the ending of it was really quite good and brought back sort of what I liked about the TV show, the first season of the TV show. Because I think the TV show as a whole is a bit flawed, but the first half of the first season is really good. But I thought it was a pretty fun movie, just not perfect. So those are my honorable mentions.
All right, sweet. Well, thank you all for joining us for this podcast. We hope you enjoyed. You can let us know what your movies are for this year. It was a great year for movies overall, I felt. I felt this was a very strong year for movies.
Even stronger than 2016, and I thought 2016 was a pretty strong
2016 was a very strong year. And, you know, no matter if you say Star Wars was great, it didn't make our list because of multiple reasons, so sorry to disappoint you, but anyways.
We'll do a whole other thing about why we were disappointed in that movie.
We might just do a Star Wars review, I don't know. We'll see. But thank you everybody so much for watching. If you like this video, you can press the like button and hit the subscribe button for more videos, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace out.